The reality is, if you kill two people in our community, and the two people you kill are your parents, if we're not going after those people...
Thank you so much.
What do you want from us?
It's kind of the all-American family. That's why we're trying to do our best to get down to what's going on in this household and figure out who our suspects are.
AJ Armstrong.
He was 16 years old when investigators say he shot and killed his parents inside their Southwest Houston home.
LA 911, where's your emergency?
I heard he got shot downstairs in my parents' room.
2 rounds, which are very close together.
Boom, boom.
Into mom's head.
And that's when I heard the gunshots, when I got like 4 or 5 stairs down.
And then across the bed to shoot Antonio.
They had it was like a mask, and like you could only see the eyes and the mouth.
Well, did you physically see somebody? Or?
Yeah, like I saw him running.
As the inconsistencies kind of started to pile up on top of one another, we can't let you get away with all this. Like there's too much.
AJ Armstrong back in court a 3rd time.
The previous 2 trials have ended up in hung juries.
The court declares a mistrial.
Declaring a mistrial.
This was not to be. The 3rd trial, we now have the verdict.
There's reasonable doubt all the way through this case from beginning to end. Find AJ Armstrong not guilty.
The days up to the murder, gasoline across the top step, setting the house on fire, searching on the internet how to detonate a car bomb, test firing a weapon. You know what his intent is.
You better get that camera out of the way.
The jury find defendant Antonio Armstrong Jr. guilty of capital murder.
We have stood by our grandson's side every day since 2016.
Our family has been through so much hell behind all of this. Tremendous grief, anxiety, and pain for the last 6 years.
There's so much evidence that points to AJ. So much evidence.
We've now seen what a murderer looks like. It can be anyone, and the fact that it was their own son, it is a tragedy for the whole family.
Seven years ago, I was there. That morning, stood right here, less than 3 hours after Dawn and Antonio Sr. were shot to death, killed right up there in their own bedroom. Of course, that morning, I could never have predicted what would happen over the next 7 years. No, that morning, I just watched as a 16-year-old was handcuffed and charged with killing the 2 people who loved him more than anything in the world, his parents. And now, well, a jury's decided he killed them too. But it's so much more than that. 7 years. What a case. What a story.
Houston 911, do you need medical, police, or fire?
I'm going to be police. He's Bel Air with the transfer. He's whispering, advising he just heard gunshots in his parents' room.
And your name?
AJ.
Any medical attention needed?
I heard gunshots, so I don't really know.
In your parents' bedroom?
Yes. And your doors are making us
Can you hear anything else?
I don't know.
Did it sound like a handgun, rifle, or shotgun?
I'm not able to out there going up to anything like that. I know my dad has a gun.
This is not someone calling 911 for help. This is someone calling 911 to try and start covering up his crime.
Okay, can you hear anything else that's going on?
I feel like
When you fire a weapon inside of a closed environment, especially without ear protection, it causes your ears to ring. It was fake. There's no panic in his voice. He's whispering for some reason.
You're on the 3rd floor?
I don't think anybody can understand the tone of his voice, the absence of fear, how just chill he is.
I hear a 16-year-old kid who's scared and doesn't know what's going on.
Prosecutors say they hear a liar.
That's their version. That doesn't mean it's true.
Don't leave from the safety of your room.
And the fact that he knows his sister is alive. Because if he's so concerned for his sister, he would run to her room. But he knows she's alive.
I think, honestly, that was a time where he kind of slipped up and let his emotions verbalize themselves, and he didn't realize it.
People love to judge how people react to situations, but they have no idea how they're going to react when they're in that situation.
Okay, they're asking you to step out of the house.
Tara, you gotta get up. Come on, you gotta get up. Come on.
He said it 4 times. I need to go get my sister. I need to go get my sister. But he never said he needed to go get his parents or check on them.
Tara, I need you to get up. Tara, I need you to get up. Come with me. Come with me. You gotta go outside.
I just can't see a 16-year-old, if they heard gunshots in their parents' room, going down there and just ignoring that and walking right by, not even looking in unless you know what happened in that room.
If he thought for a moment there was an assailant potentially in the house, how could he do that? That just doesn't make sense, except if you are the killer.
You gotta go outside. I was up in the bathroom and I heard gunshots and all that. You gotta go outside and figure out what's going on. Come on, just grab my hand and stay behind me.
Hey, I'm the one that called. Tara, come on.
You would just run out of the house. You wouldn't think about, is the alarm on? Or the fact that he remembered to turn it off before he exited the house, I think is an admission in and of itself.
Mic check, 1, 2, 3.
Good morning, my name is Investigator Jimmy Dotson with the HPD Homicide Division.
16 minutes.
Officers this morning were dispatched at approximately about 1:30 in the morning.
From the moment AJ called 911 to the moment police arrived, 16 minutes that would be scrutinized and dissected for years, methodically picked apart.
They made contact with one of the children who was inside of the house at the time.
But in the early morning hours of July 29th, 2016, officers first arriving on scene simply saw a 16-year-old and his little sister with no idea what they were walking into.
He's heard gunshots. He doesn't know what's going on. He runs out. The police immediately accuse him of doing it.
Those patrol officers that went in that house were utter heroes. They literally didn't know what they were going into. They secured the crime scene. Investigators show up a couple hours later.
So I start at the front door, but I'm a detective that likes to go straight to where the scene of the crime happened.
When now former Houston Police Detective Jimmy Dotson arrived at the Armstrong house in Southwest Houston, he noted several family members outside, had questions for them. But first, Dotson needed to see what had happened to Dawn and Antonio Sr. The detective went into the house, up the stairs to the second floor, through double doors that led to an office.
The first thing I see is like a little projectile sitting on the carpet. And I look up, and when I look up, I'm like, it's interesting, there's a hole in the ceiling.
That office ceiling directly under A.J. Armstrong's third floor bedroom.
And so I see that, and I kind of just put that in my back pocket.
Then, into the bedroom where Dawn lay dead. The 42-year-old mother had been shot twice behind her right ear. Antonio Sr. had been next to her, also shot in the head, but all that remained was the blood stain. He was still breathing when paramedics had arrived, gasping, fighting for his life, they said in court. The 42-year-old father was rushed to the hospital, where he too would later die.
You think about the evil act that had to take place to take a woman like Dawn out of this world and Antonio out of this world, who were just trying to be good parents. Like, they provided an amazing life for their kids. I mean, they lived in a beautiful home that, AJ Armstrong Jr. was driving a nice truck and Josh is driving a Mustang, and like, this is provided to them by a family that loves them. They got killed for being good parents, at the end of the day.
Next, Dodson says he went into the kitchen. The murder weapon, a .22 caliber pistol on the counter. Antonio Sr.'s own gun. Drawers pulled out, and a note. I have been watching you for a long time. Come get me.
And so all these things kind of start telling me someone's trying to throw us off here, but they're not either mature enough or sophisticated enough to kind of pull it off.
You think the scene looks juvenile at this point?
It looks juvenile and it looks very staged.
There is teenager written all over this crime. I mean, that note is something you would see in a movie. That's not a note that you would see in real life.
Somebody who would take the time to write that is somebody who had complete control over the crime scene. Wasn't worried about getting out of the house, wasn't worried about who else was alive in the house.
If it's the victim's own weapon, it means it has to be someone with knowledge of the weapon. If anybody came from the outside, one, they wouldn't use their own victim's gun, and two, you wouldn't have it there for the police to do the check on it.
Dodson noted the windows on the first floor were closed, locked. Same with the doors, blinds undisturbed.
We see the living room, it's perfect. We see the dining room and it's perfect. You know, the house is very well kept. I'm like, let's go back into my back pocket now. I need to go up to the third floor because that bullet clearly came through the floor up there. I need to go see what that looks like.
A.J. Armstrong's bedroom, a pile of socks in the middle of the floor.
And that was weird to me because it coincided with where the bullet was. Well, I know that on TV, like everything else, you know, they want to make things quieter when we do things. And so that's where my mind immediately goes. I bet you he stuck his hand inside of there, pulled a trigger on the gun to make sure that it was quiet so that no one else heard it.
Inside AJ's closet, police later collected this comforter and a Texas A&M pillow with a bullet hole.
After I've looked at AJ's room and everything, now I've got enough to form the questions that I need to ask family members. And so my next step was to go outside and identify who all was there and start interviewing them on the scene.
One by one, Dodson started questioning them, including Dawn's parents and Antonio Sr.'s mother.
I was asking about the family dynamics. You know, what is the relationship like between the kids and their parents?
And then Dodson says he'll never forget it. What he says one of AJ's grandmothers said.
One of them told me that if AJ did do it, it would be because of drugs. You know, he's been having problems with drugs.
You didn't say anything about AJ? Someone just, a family member just volunteered that information?
She did during the interview. You know, and for us, you know, that's a red flag, right? That's something else that's kind of going into this stack of evidence that we have over there.
What was really going on in the Armstrong house? There was one person who might know. Josh Armstrong, AJ's older half-brother. Josh Armstrong lived less than a mile from the Armstrong house in his own apartment. Dodson interviewed him first. Josh's account?
My brother called me. I jumped in the car. I hauled butt over here. And at that point in time, why would he be a suspect? You know, there's no reason for him to be. I'm being told the doors were locked. I'm being told the alarm was secured. The weapon's inside of the home. There's a test fire through the third floor. At this point, the evidence is monumental, leading one way.
They thought they had their guy and they weren't going to worry about any other evidence, and they never did any other investigation.
HPD zeroed in on AJ within the first 10 minutes, 11 minutes of being on scene.
If you look at the evidence in this case, why would we think otherwise?
They were right. And it didn't take them long to come to a crime scene and say, this looks like the work of a 16-year-old who tried to cover something up.
All these arrows are pointing in one direction. We don't go on wild geese chase.
Police questioned Josh, photographed his hands. They bagged AJ's and Kayra's, who, remember, was just 12 years old. Later, tests would confirm no gunshot residue was found on any of them. As detectives worked, another call came into 911, this one frantic.
Houston 911, you need medical, police, or fire?
Somebody's been shot.
Excuse me?
Somebody's been shot. I need police.
Hannah Pilon, Josh's girlfriend, who had spent the night with him at his apartment.
I went to sleep around like 10 or 11. And then it was all downhill from there.
And the next thing you know, what do you remember?
Josh shaking me, saying, babe, wake up, somebody's in the house.
Hannah says Josh told her AJ called. Their parents had been shot. Josh grabbed a shotgun from the closet and ran out, leaving a terrified Hannah.
Okay, ma'am, please, I need for you to calm down for a little bit.
I'm at my boyfriend's apartment, and he just woke me up, and
ran over to his house because he lived like 2 minutes down the street because his brother got a call. He just got there and just called me and told me that his parents had been shot.
You know, I only talked to him for 5 minutes, yes, but we were observing him the entire time. When I was interviewing others, I was seeing him, and he was just sitting there waiting patiently.
Police let Josh go. He went home to Hannah.
Josh's face was just really puffy. You could tell he had been crying and I didn't know what to do. I just tried to be there for him as best as I could.
But his brother, AJ, arrested, handcuffed, read his rights, taken to police headquarters, where an officer checking AJ in slapped this orange visitor's badge on the teen's chest. We'll come back to that. And the questioning began.
If we'd have been able to show the world how stoic he was the whole time, they would have known right off the bat, like, this is cold. It's very cold.
The Armstrongs truly were the all-American family. Antonio Sr., from humble beginnings, born in Kashmir Gardens, a working-class, predominantly black community in North Houston, the oldest of three. Faith, family, football was life.
Now Walters back
And football opened doors.
Antonio Armstrong gets to the quarterback.
Antonio played for Texas A&M. He was really good. All-American linebacker good. Drafted by the 49ers, played briefly for the Dolphins and Rams, and when Dawn came into his life, it was them against the world.
You know, people would look at them and say they were almost a perfect couple.
When they met at church, Dawn's son Josh was a toddler. Antonio loved him like his own. And after the couple married, Antonio adopted Josh.
They were amazing. They were two amazing people. And Antonio was a wonderful father. I couldn't have had a better daughter-in-law, a greater mother to be the mother of my grandchildren. I would tell her that a lot.
Football took them to Canada, where AJ was born. Here's Antonio Sr. playing in the Canadian League.
Antonio Armstrong.
Family brought them back to Houston. They opened a couple gyms. Antonio was a pastor at his mother's church. Dawn taught Sunday school.
They just did everything together, and that's saying a lot. When you have work together, you go to church together.
The same church where hundreds of people would attend their funerals in 2016. AJ in the front row, special permission to attend his parents' service because by then he had been charged with killing them. Capital murder, 16, and in juvenile jail. It was AJ's own words, police say.
Now, just a little bit of information for you. What's your first name?
Antonio.
That helped put him there, helped detectives build their case.
As the inconsistencies kind of started to pile up on top of one another, you know, that's when you'll hear me in the interview kind of chime in and be like, look, man, we can't let you get away with all this.
All right, today's date is July 29th, 2016. It is 7:47 a.m.
6 hours after AJ called 911, he was inside the Houston Police Department getting interrogated.
How was your relationship with your parents in general?
It was a pretty good relationship.
Okay, you get along with your mom? Get along with dad? No problems, no
Me and
issues?
dad were like really close. And then me and my mom, like me, my brother, and my sister like had our like little issues with my mom, but it was never anything like serious. Like it was just like family stuff. But we were all like really close. So.
It seems little and it seems minute, but that's what we as detectives are supposed to find, right? The minutia, the small details. And so for us, we're like, that's a weird answer.
Let's just start with the concept that you know your mother's dead. It's 5 hours later, and he says some nice things about his dad, and then says, but my brother, sister, and I have issues with our mom. That just begins the whole process. That's not normal, and that shows a disdain for her.
Whenever we tell him that his mother's gone, she's not coming back, there's no emotion at all. That's what made it so eerie, actually, because we've got all of this evidence pointing one direction, and that's at him.
You can speculate and say, yeah, he should be upset, but maybe he's in shock. Maybe he's not, he's just lost. Maybe he hasn't slept. in the 8 hours he's been in the back of a police car. There's many reasons for that.
As I was walking downstairs, that's when I heard the 2 gunshots go off, and I ran back upstairs. And then when I ran back upstairs, I heard somebody run out of my parents' room and, like, hit the door. And then I don't know how they got out. And, like, I just, like, personally felt bad because, like, I saw the guy. Like, I feel like I should have done something. But, I mean...
Well, did you physically see somebody? Or
no, like, I saw him running. Like, I saw him running.
Okay, but then you would have seen him go out a window or out a door or something?
No, because when, like, you've been into the house, so it's like my parents' room's here. And then you'd have, like, it's when you come out of my parents' room, you go this way. And, like, this window, it's impossible. Like, that window's impossible to get out of.
It's second floor, too.
Yeah, second floor.
Now, the person that you seen, I mean, what did he look like? Is it he or she? Or?
They had it was like a mask, and, like, you could only see the eyes and the mouth. But he looked like a black guy, but I'm not, like, 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure it was an African-American. And, like, I'd say, like, 6 feet, maybe. Okay. Somewhere around there. I couldn't give you, like, age range. I didn't really, like, get to see his face or anything like that.
We knew that he never mentioned a masked intruder in the 911 call. If you actually saw that, that's the first thing you say whenever you call a 911. There's a guy in my house, there's a murder in my house, I heard gunshots, but that's not what he says.
There's nothing more powerful than a defendant saying things that are so inconsistent. He thinks he's smart, but he's 16, and he's not smarter than us, and he's not smarter than the homicide investigators, and they knew it.
He's 16 years old. He's a kid. He's a minor in that situation. So I find it difficult to tell him what he needs to do and what he doesn't need to do.
Have you ever asked him, why didn't you say that on the 911 call?
I can't, obviously for legal reasons, I can't discuss my conversations with my client.
Does your dad own a gun?
Yes, he does.
How many guns does he own?
He owns 1.
1 gun? Do you know what kind of gun it is?
I just know it's like a pistol. I think it's a 22, but I'm not like 100% positive. Like only time I've ever like used it was when we went to the gun range when I was like 8 years old or something like that.
And you're like, well, we didn't ask you if you've ever used it or picked it up. We just asked if there's a gun in the home.
He has his case in one of his drawers, and like my dad, his drawers, the closet, and under the bed is like off limits. So like, I've never gone in there or like seen it or anything like that, except for when he brings it out.
Does your dad have a weapon? It wasn't, do you know anything about the murder weapon? Does your dad have a weapon? And he says, yes, he does. And then all of a sudden has to distinguish, but I haven't touched it in 8 years. There's a reason why you're saying that, because you know you had just touched it to test fire and kill both your parents.
This idea that at first he's never touched the gun.
I'm not going to go through every one of these. I don't want to retry the case.
I'm not retrying the case. What would you say to that?
That's their theory.
That's it.
Yeah.
The only times that he really showed any type of emotion outside of that was when we presented him with evidence that he didn't know we had, which the number one piece was the test fire. When we told him there was a bullet hole in the ceiling and a projectile on the floor, that's when he's like, what?
That comes from the loft, which is your bedroom. Yeah, that comes through the floor. From the loft, from your room upstairs.
Yeah.
Where your room is?
The third floor.
Yeah.
There's a bullet hole in the ceiling.
There's a bullet hole in the study area that goes through, and you can see that it comes through because it pushes out in the study area.
They use a trajectory rod.
How long has that been there?
Well, that's why we're talking to you.
It's the only time he's not prepared to answer the question. And I think that's the case because I don't think he knew it went through the floor.
And then he kind of starts putting on this little bit of a charade because his wheels are spinning. How can I lie this away? How can I talk about this? How can I say that I had nothing to do with it when it's coming from my bedroom?
I can explain the gun from the room upstairs. It was like I think it was 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. Like me and one of my friends was just like playing around, and they were about to leave, and he was like, hey, well, not really he was like me. I was like, hey, like, have you ever shot a gun before? And they were like, nah, I've never done it. And I was like, do you want me to show you how to? And like I like went and checked the 3 places, and the gun was under my dad's bed, and I like laid the pillow. I laid my pillow and then like a blanket over it and a blanket under it, thinking like that would stop it, but I guess it did not stop it.
You can hear him searching for answers, and his explanation of that is so unbelievable, and it's so clear that he's lying about it. I think that was one of the most damning parts of the entire interview.
And in fact, when folks in the community try talking about whether he did it or not, they never talk about his own words. He's tied to it, and he can't escape it.
A few minutes ago, you said that you haven't seen it. You haven't shot it since you were a kid, and then now we kind of give you a little more, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. So,
I understand.
We don't want to keep getting deeper into this because there's more.
The story would change again, though, 30 minutes later.
He was there, like we had the conversation.
But not when you fired the gun.
Yeah, he wasn't there. He wasn't there when I fired the gun.
All of a sudden, the friend wasn't there anymore. He just up and disappeared, and it was again one of those inconsistencies.
They're like, aha, he said it was his friend, and then he said his friend wasn't there. Aha, we caught him. Find out who the friend is. Ask him who the friend is. But they never asked it, and then the position is, well, he's supposed to tell us who it is. Come on, he's 16. You're a seasoned investigator.
Why'd you shoot it into a pillow?
Like I saw that on movies. I thought that like stops the bullet. So like that's what I did.
Police confronted AJ about the alarm too. It was set, house was secure, all doors to the outside locked, and you turned off the house alarm before letting officers in, they reminded him. AJ sticks to his story. He saw someone else in the house.
Like I don't know like exactly what happened from the time when he came out of the room to when he left, because like as soon as I saw him, I was gone upstairs. So I don't know exactly what happened with him. I'm just saying I'm assuming that's how he got out, because I don't know any other way to get out of our house. Mm-hmm. And I know I didn't personally touch the gun. Like I know there's no gun residue on my hand or on my clothes or anything like that. So I know it has nothing to do with me. I just don't understand. I don't understand how he got out or even how he got in.
But I had nothing to do with this, so I don't know what to tell you. And that was for us, that dismissive approach that he took was almost as good as him just telling me, yeah, I did it. I did it because they were making me mad.
He's under pressure by these police officers. He's been accused of a crime, and he's telling them, you're not going to find GSR on my hands. You're not going to find any evidence that I did this. So either he's a mastermind criminal with nerves of steel, or he's being honest.
He said it over and over. Well, there's no GSR on me, and he was right.
It's a tactic. It's an interviewing tactic, and so. Because personally, I wouldn't have GSR'd anybody on that scene because I know what the weapon is. 22 does not often give back a GSR hit.
So of course Dotson's gonna say that now, that it was an interview tactic. What happened in this case is that they thought that when the testing came back, there was gonna be evidence of him being involved in this crime. And when it didn't come back, they were like, oh, there's no evidence that he's involved in this.
And that intruder theory, at one point, police lean into it.
We know which way your dad was sleeping. He was sleeping on his left side facing the wall, which is right where that gun's going to be. So if I'm in there rifling around, you think daddy's going to wake up and whoop someone's behind?
He will.
He will, right? You think mama's going to wake up? I mean, mamas are light sleepers usually because they're always worried about their babies. So I've got two parents in a room where a gun is kept. I've got you telling me that. Your sisters told me that's where the gun's kept, so we know this.
Exactly.
So how does a bad guy get in and get the gun?
Who is going to rifle through Dad's nightstand looking for a gun, make sure the gun is loaded, and go through the noise it takes to do that, and then walk around the other side of the bed and kill Mom first? That's a ridiculous theory to believe. The person who walked in and executed these two people always had the gun on them, and the last person who had the gun was the defendant.
52 minutes. That's how long police interviewed AJ. Over and over and over, the teen says he had nothing to do with his parents' murder. Towards the end, he floated one more idea.
I mean, I understand, like, it makes it seem like, well, you're the only other person. But, I mean, I know it personally has nothing to do with me. And I'm not, like, saying that my dad put a hit out on my mom and the dude, like, went bad and then shot my dad. Like, I'm not saying anything like that.
And it's probably the most powerful line within that statement. One, he's making his mom the person that needs to be hit. And secondly, it's an intimate knowledge of the crime scene. Dawn was shot execution style. 2 bullets so close to each other, it formed a keyhole inside her head. It was the equivalent of a hit. And Antonio was shot across the bed. As he lifted his head, it went bad. He would never know that if he had never been in that room. And so it's funny, he's sitting there lying and coming up with things. I don't think he can escape that statement.
When you tell him he's going to be charged with capital murder, reaction?
He literally says to us, "What evidence do you have?" And I said, "I just laid it out for you in this interview. I just told you every piece of evidence that we have, you know." And I said, "And we're going to get other things back, alarm records and different things like that that are going to help solidify this more, you know." And that coldness, again, it was one of the interviews that I've been in that was the coldest, because he just didn't care.
They're just a very stoic family. I think mom and dad were very stoic, and they taught AJ to not be emotional and overreact in those situations.
Later on that day, I had found out that they had taken AJ into custody, and I just remember thinking, no, no way, they have the wrong person. Josh was the same way. He was mad. He was that little boy, that little 16-year-old boy. Like, they have to have the wrong person.
I understand how you're saying it looks impossible, but I'm telling you, even though it looks impossible, I had nothing to do with it, and I honestly don't know what else to say. So we might as well just end this interview, because I don't know what else. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do.
Antonio and Dawn Armstrong's son wore a green jumpsuit, his hands and feet in shackles.
But tonight, those close to that teen say he could not have done it. It's just not in him.
A judge decided this morning that he should stay in jail during the court proceedings, which will likely take several months. Quote, until I hear the facts and he gets convicted, I'm standing by my friend, end quote.
For prosecutors, they're moving forward with the case, still deciding whether or not to try this young man as an adult.
AJ.
He was out. For the first time since his parents were killed, AJ was going home to family. He was 17 now. As his friends were finishing up junior year of high school, AJ was getting fitted for an ankle monitor, a bond condition of his capital murder charge. Now, it was time to prep for trial. Meanwhile, the case dominated the headlines in Houston. Court appearances and questions. So many questions. Mainly, why would this teen, who seemingly had it all, kill his parents? Well, AJ himself was about to tell us, and tell us why he didn't do it. 7 months before trial, AJ sat down with me for the first time. We'd do it again a year later. He had never shared his side of the story, never talked publicly about the night his parents were killed. Now, to be totally honest, there were parameters on the interview. We couldn't talk about the evidence, couldn't talk about the crime scene. No, all of that would come out in court, his attorney said. But AJ did tell me what he says happened the night of the murders.
Yeah, you guys stay.
It's been really hard. It's not even the fact of just dealing with not having my parents anymore. It's the fact that I'm being accused of something of this magnitude. I mean, like, I'm innocent. There was somebody else in the house that night, and to know that this is something I'm being accused of just makes everything so much worse.
Somebody else in the house that night. His family believes him. AJ's grandparents, Dawn's parents, and Antonio Sr.'s mother supported their grandson from the moment he was charged.
We want everybody to know our grandson is innocent.
I don't know what I would do if I didn't have the family that I have, where I would be.
Did his grandparents ever have their doubts?
No.
We will stand
We know
strong.
him.
We know our
That's
grandson.
the thing. We know our grandson.
Yes.
We know what he's capable of doing
Yes.
and what he's not capable of doing.
No.
And we know that he's not capable of murdering his mother and his father.
I never imagined my life would be like this at this point in time, but like I said, I'm just handling it the best way I can.
The state has no reason why AJ would have done something like this. The reason why they have no motive is because he didn't do it. There is no motive. There is no reason why.
There are murders in our community, and they're rare across this nation, that kill and we will never understand. His motive was he wanted his parents dead. And he certainly wanted his mother dead. He killed the one person that was attempting to hold him accountable.
That is undeniable. Thousands and thousands of text messages, and we really got a sense of who these folks are as people and as parents.
As the progression of the messages went on, we could tell something was happening in the family. And I don't even know that Don Armstrong really understood what was going on. It was a progression of how concerned they became with him.
There's a void of emotion within his messages.
The typical stuff that a 16-year-old male would do, spending money on his girlfriend, not wanting to hang out with his sister.
And we saw the anger and the frustration and the desperation of Don Armstrong.
Lying about his grades, maybe lying about practices.
All you do is lie. All you do is lie and scheme. That's all you do. I don't see a lot of mothers telling their son that.
That does not make a double murderer.
And we saw it progress throughout the spring and into the summer before they were killed.
Every time I come to court.
A.J. Armstrong didn't talk to me about the lies, about getting caught, about arguing with his parents. It was his first interview right before trial 1. He talked about a father he idolized and a mother he adored.
I mean, my dad was my best friend. My mom was the best mom you could have. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about the things that they did for me and just the great parents that they were.
The great parents that they were. Can't argue that. The Armstrongs sent their children to one of the most exclusive, expensive private schools in Houston, the Kincaid School. Bought AJ a car, took nice vacations, a dream life, so it seemed. And Dawn was just so proud of her kids.
Just the value and
In 2014, she did a story with us as Josh headed off to college. Gifts for your high school grad.
This was a way that we felt he could take a piece of us with him.
In the very room that would become part of her own murder crime scene 2 years later. The blanket of happy memories found folded feet from where her lifeless body lay.
She was just a loving, caring. I just miss her so much.
We were able to prove his manipulation and his scheming that he was being accused of by the parents. The only person that ever caught him was Dawn. And Dawn didn't even know these other messages were going on. She just knew her son. Like simultaneous communication within 30 seconds of talking to his parents, specifically a lot of the deleted text messages with his girlfriend, where it is well beyond what a normal teenager would do.
We've always felt strongly about those text messages that they don't show anything but a 16-year-old, typical 16-year-old.
Typical teenager who by 2019, 3 years after those texts, after the murders, was about to go on trial. The first team of prosecutors would bring in the text messages. They'd tell the jury the Armstrong house alarm was on, all the doors and windows were locked when Dawn and Antonio Sr. were shot to death. They argued no way an intruder would have gone into Antonio Sr.'s nightstand, rummaged around looking for the ex-NFL player's pistol, instead of bringing his own gun to the scene. In the end, though, it wasn't enough.
I'm going to take you inside the courtroom.
After 38 hours of testimony from 37 witnesses over 3.5 weeks,
it is improbable the jury can reach a verdict, and accordingly, because of that, the court declares a mistrial.
A hung jury.
Is this a win? Is this a lose for you?
It's not a win or a loss. We now know that there are people that did not believe the state's theory of the case. So we're going to keep fighting for this young man as long as we have to.
But it was hardly over. The district attorney's office decided to try AJ again with 2 new prosecutors.
I knew about the case, like most people in our community, because it was a fascinating case.
We felt like the new kids on the block, and we felt like everybody had been there and they all got it, and we were just trying to catch up.
And again, a year later, AJ wanted to talk.
I mean, I feel like people probably would like to hear from me.
What do you want to say to them?
For me, it's just, I know that, what should I don't know. How do y'all want to handle that? Okay.
A moment with his attorneys off camera, and then
I've been adamant about that since the moment everything happened, from the moment I was on the phone till this day. I've said I didn't do it. I'll never change from that because I know it's the truth. And for me, that's just, that's just the one thing that I really want people to know, because being in this situation and just that being a constant reminder that someone would even think that it's something that I would do. Like, it's just, like, it hurts. It's frustrating.
There are people out there watching this who think, yeah, he did it, he killed his parents.
I can't sit here and allow it to affect me, because at the end of the day, not everyone's gonna love me.
another 3+ years would pass. Delays, COVID. Finally, in October 2022, Trial 2, a month before AJ turned 23 years old. He'd grown up, had a baby with Kate, who had stayed by his side. Unwavering support from the rest of the family, too. AJ's sister Kara, now 18 years old, took the stand again, testifying for her brother. As she recounted that night, the only other survivor in the house. After only 2 weeks and 24 witnesses this time,
the court on its own motion at this time is declaring a mistrial.
A second hung jury.
It's manifestly necessary.
It's been 40, 50 witnesses. It's been probably millions of dollars of expenses by the district attorney's office. It's time to let this young man go.
So when the DA announced they would try AJ a third time, the Armstrongs didn't hold back.
We have stood by our grandson's side every day since 2016. Everyone in the family fully supports him and believes in his innocence and the charges. Our family thought and grieves.
Our family has been through tremendous grief, anxiety, and pain for the last 6 years.
But the reality is, if you kill two people in our community and the two people you kill are your parents, how else would you want us to spend our resources and our time? If we're not going after those people, what do you want from us?
It's time for the DA to stop forcing our family to live through this terrible nightmare. It's just horrible.
The evidence has always been there. We've always believed in his guilt. We just needed a fair and focused jury.
Focused because the third jury was about to get new evidence 7 years later. A speck of blood found on the eve of Trial 3, pressed against AJ Armstrong's t-shirt he was wearing the night of the murders.
I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like literally we have 3 hours before trial starts.
That would have both sides trying to figure out how did it get on AJ and whose blood was it? Inside the Houston Police Department lived the Armstrong evidence, stored here between trials. And less than 24 hours before the third one was set to start, blood spatter expert Celestina Rossi signed in to look at bloody pillows from Dawn and Antonio Sr.'s bed.
And so as I was looking through the inventory list, I realized that there was a shirt, a pair of pants, and 2 sandals that were in property.
You hadn't physically touched them, seen them yet?
Correct, yeah, because they've always been at property. You know, they weren't used in trial 2, they weren't brought to the courthouse, and so I never had the opportunity to look, and I was like, oh, well, if they're here, then absolutely we need to look at those.
That's exactly what she did. You see it in the video. Rossi and another officer put on gloves, cut open an evidence box, and remove AJ's sweatpants and t-shirt. She inspects the front of the shirt. Something catches her eye.
I see what looks to be small reddish-brown circular stains, which to a bloodstain pattern analyst looks like spatter. But I was like, this is suspicious to me because I've been told for years that there's no blood on his clothing, and now it appears that there are stains that look to be blood stains.
Rossi tests the stains right there using what's called a hemastick, like this. She showed us in her lab. Now, if the stick changes color, it's positive for the chemical found in blood. The stains on the shirt were negative. But then Rossi peeled that orange HPD visitor's badge and saw this. 2 reddish-brown stains on the back of the sticker. She tested them.
And it was such a strong reaction that I was like, oh wow. I mean, it almost turned the pad black.
What did you think? I have to call prosecutors, investigators. How did they miss this? What did you think?
I mean, we are within hours of the trial starting. I feel panic because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not going to go well.
He was upset.
I was so, I mean, imagine we're at the Friday before opening statements, and here we are delayed.
Delayed a couple months while DNA testing happened, confirming the blood under that badge was Antonio Sr.'s.
How come after 7 years we're just now finding this? One, there was a report that came out said there is no blood on the clothes, and that's from an accredited lab. So we said we don't need to look at the clothes. And 2, it was something that we never even thought of.
Was it a mistake that it took investigators this long to find it? Was that a problem?
I'm not going to point fingers, but to Ryan's point, we understood it looked bad 7 years later.
No, I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think that anyone was at fault. I just don't know that that's necessarily what they were specifically, looking for.
It wasn't like he's covered in blood and we missed it, right? He had a gray t-shirt on with dark red lettering on the thing, and there were little bitty flecks that it's gonna be very hard to see to the naked eye. I'm not someone in the lab that tests shirts, so I don't know that I would have taken the sticker off. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't really think about it. Well, if there's no blood over here, why would there be blood under this tiny little sticker?
It felt dirty. It felt shady. It felt like something wasn't right. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, let me get that clear, but it just didn't feel right.
The folks who believe the blood was planted will never believe in the evidence that we have. We will never convince the folks that believe that police officers will actually plan evidence to look at this case objectively. And I'm just being raw and sincere.
Any allegation that there was any nefarious conduct by myself or the 2 HPD homicide detectives is absolutely ludicrous.
I have no doubt in my mind, based on my experience over the past 25 years, that at a minimum it was cross-contamination. The way that evidence was handled after the trials, how it was exposed to that blood, and you saw in the trial that as we moved the pillows from box to box, the blood would shed into the box.
You are tasked with ultimately trying to explain how it got there, correct?
Yes.
It was hard to envision a 16-year-old going into a room and executing both his parents. I think I even avoided the thought. And so in this trial, we realized we needed to lean into it. And that is one of the reasons why we brought in the staircase. We brought in the bed into the courtroom because we needed the jury to understand how sinister this crime was and not hide it. We did everything different.
Trial number 3, August 2023.
Anytime, as prosecutors, we can explain to the jury the how.
The jury would see how AJ shot his parents, how blood could have ended up on the badge, according to the state, because the courtroom became the crime scene.
AJ comes into the bedroom, comes to this side of the bed, draws, fires 2 rounds, which are very close together. One goes into mom's head, one goes through mom's earlobe, and then into her head.
And then it's your theory that he stays in the same position and fires at Dad? What happens?
Because of how the trajectory is, it appears that Dad was starting to lift up his head.
So the theory is one of 2 things happened. His intent was to go into that room and kill his mother, and his mother only, and his dad woke up, and when that happened, he shot at Dad. Or his intent all along was to kill both of them.
In 2016, no blood was found on AJ, but Rossi says after analyzing the scene, that makes sense because there's no backspatter from firing the gun.
Well, if we don't have any blood here on the pillowcase, we don't have any blood on our shoulder, we don't have any blood on the fitted sheet, there can't be blood on a shooter.
So where did the blood under the badge come from? Rossi explained it to the jury like this. As Antonio Sr. fought for his life, AJ came around the bed and placed a pillow over his father's head. He was found by paramedics like that. Gasping and wheezing, Antonio Sr. exhaled micro droplets of blood and saliva that got on AJ, she testified.
When they are in flight, they're drying. And so not completely dry like salt or sugar, okay? But dry to the point where when it hits an absorbent surface like a shirt, it's not soaking in. And when they walk into the Houston Police Department and they put this badge on his shirt, it preserves all of these little granules of blood and preserves it between the sticker and the shirt.
Is it believable that this dried blood would have stayed on him for hours?
Absolutely. I mean, because they're so small that they're sitting in the weave of the shirt.
It's drying in midair. I've never heard that. To me, the evidence was laughable. It was a joke. It just looked bad, in my opinion. It looked desperate. It clearly could have been cross-contamination.
Outside the Armstrong bedroom suite, the staircase AJ says he was on when he came face to face with the killer leaving his parents' bedroom. Prosecutors built that to scale for the jury, too. Remember, AJ told police he was on the steps coming down from his third-floor loft when he heard gunshots.
You can peep real quick and see what's going on from my stairs, and I saw someone coming out.
We played the 911 portion of the tape so they could hear what he said and see what it would have been. We played the portion of the defendant's statement where he says he saw it, and now they're seeing it. So we're giving them a visual of what we believe is his lies on his 911 as well as his statement.
From the jury box to the staircase, the exact 3-foot, 3-inch distance of that narrow hallway outside the Armstrong suite where AJ told police he saw a masked man.
It was like a mask, and you could only see the eyes and the mouth, but he looked like a black guy.
If that's how close you really are to that person, you're going to mention it on a 16-minute 911 call. You're not going to leave that fact out. It wasn't like I didn't get a good look, or I don't know what I saw, so I won't bring it up. I mean, he would have been in his face. If you're the masked man and you see somebody right there, it's going to take nothing for you to pull the gun and shoot that person too, because you don't want to leave any witnesses.
And if you don't see him, you're going to hear him go up the stairs because it's going to be loud as you run up the stairs. So every way we looked at it was bad for the defendant.
But it wasn't just what AJ said or what he didn't say on that 911 call that was bad for the teen, prosecutors argued. It was what he was doing on his cell phone.
I have him unplugging the phone at 1:08.
Right up until the murders.
And my heart just sunk because I knew what happened at 1:09.
That would prove AJ was lying, they say. That would prove he killed his parents. At 1:40 a.m., AJ called 911.
I heard 2 gunshots downstairs in my parents' room.
Prosecutors argued that was a lie. They say AJ actually killed his parents nearly half an hour earlier, and they used his own cell phone data and records from the Armstrong security system to prove it.
I think we even narrowed the timeline down from 1:09 to 1:16 based on his phone activity, that's the exact time period in which they were killed.
It all just fit.
The night before the murders at 9:52 p.m., Kayra set the house alarm after saying goodnight to her parents on the 2nd floor. Alarm records show the motion sensor outside their bedroom went idle at 10:39 p.m. AJ had been texting his girlfriend until close to midnight, his cell records show. At 1:02 a.m. on July 29th, he stopped using his iPhone and plugged it in a couple minutes later. At 1:08, according to those cell records, he unplugged it, though the phone stayed locked. Over the next 32 minutes, the display screen on AJ's phone went on and off, 13 times, the records show, right up until AJ called Josh, then 911, saying he heard shots.
And we know he's manipulating his phone without looking at anything in his phone.
Just think about that for a moment. So from 102 to 140, his phone is on, it is locked, but it's just not sitting down.
And when that fit in perfectly with the alarm records, I thought it was over then. Then we had him.
At 1:09, a minute after AJ's phone was unplugged, that second floor motion sensor outside Dawn and Antonio Sr.'s bedroom activated. 16 minutes after that, at 1:25 a.m., the first floor motion sensor activated. The house alarm stayed set the entire time.
What he was doing in that dark room, turning a light on, putting pillows over their face, cleaning up the scene. We know that he went downstairs at 1:25, put the gun downstairs, and wrote the note. And he never used his phone to light up after he had gone downstairs.
And he's awake, moving around in his home at the very time of the murders. It doesn't get that complicated.
We know nobody came in or out of the house, and we know that motion was going on inside the house. And the motion that was going on inside the home lined up perfectly, like a puzzle, with other things we knew to be true.
If you can't trust the alarm, how could it fit like a puzzle?
The house was locked. The alarm was on. The windows were locked. That explains it all.
Trial number 2, their expert testifies that he agrees that there were 77 errors with the alarm system. So you have to ask yourself, can you trust that alarm system?
Prosecutors argued the defense misinterpreted the records, and on the night of the murders, there were no errors.
It's almost impossible in cases like this to prove on the night or at the time or whatever that something's not working. You look around it at the reliability. And I think we've proven in all 3 trials that the alarm system was not reliable.
But prosecutors leaned on those alarm records to put AJ at the house all day long, stewing.
That became important to us because that's when we believe he did the test fire. We know that parents were in and out of the house. We knew that Kayra was staying with grandmother all that week and hadn't come back yet.
And we know he's grounded that week. He is not allowed to leave the house. He's not allowed to use the cars. Kate is down in Galveston. He's upset about that. We know the day of, he's trying to borrow the Mustang from Josh to go down to Galveston. Why? Because he's not allowed to use the car. So there's something going on there that we will never understand, but it's significant in the absence of the communication with the parents. And so when folks ask, what was the last straw? Something in the silence of those text messages, something in him being confined to that house other than told to go pick up his sister is what's in his mind. We will never know, but that is significant. He tried to burn the house down 2 days before the murder. Who does that? He poured gasoline across the top step of his parents' stairs right outside their bedroom and set it on fire. His parents caught it. We know this because he admitted that.
The significance of that was probably big for the jury, I understand that, but also you have to look at the reaction of the family. The family didn't have much reaction to it.
Despite the text message from Dawn to Josh saying, look at this, you know, she sent that picture to Josh. She seemed pretty upset. You say that's not really the case.
I'm not saying that's not really the case. I'm just saying that it doesn't appear that AJ was severely punished.
The morning after the fire at 6:51 a.m., this search happened on AJ's iPad. How can a car be rigged to explode when started?
I mean, we set the house on fire. We Googled how to rig a car bomb. You know, I mean, those are things that show us, man, you're thinking about killing your parents. The evidence is overwhelming.
The thing that causes people pause is they can't understand how someone so handsome and so young could commit such a brutal crime. That's a reality. In order to try and get A.J. Armstrong free, they had to point to someone who had a mental illness, a breakdown, who was a good person, and his life was forever changed in order to get him off.
Josh Armstrong, the oldest of the three siblings, he looked out for AJ and Kara, felt responsible for them. That was clear. In July 2016, Josh had only been back in Houston a few weeks, living in his own apartment, attending community college classes.
He was very passionate about anything he did, especially his music, and he just had a really big heart. He was such a loving and caring person.
Josh's girlfriend Hannah moved back too. The couple met a year earlier in College Station, northwest of Houston, when they were both students at Blinn College. They were inseparable, young, smiling, dizzy in love.
Our paths crossed, and then the rest was history.
What was the best part of being together?
Time just didn't exist with him. You know. I'm already gonna get emotional.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh. He was a really good guy.
Happiness turned to heartache. You know that by now. But the Josh before his parents were murdered, he was carefree, a son close to his mother. They leaned on each other, Hannah says.
I felt like I knew Dawn, especially through Josh. They talked pretty much every day. It's just so sad.
He loved his mom.
You could tell just by their phone conversations how much he loved her.
And if you read the text messages in June and July, you understand who he is and who she is as a mother and their relationship. And he was ordinary, he was kind, he was sweet.
It is so clear what happened to him in his life as a result of his parents' death. And it was a total contrast from AJ. It was Josh fell apart in the wake of his parents' death. He couldn't cope with it. And the trauma that he suffered was so extreme.
Josh started to spiral, started to lose touch with reality because he lost his parents. Prosecutors argued at trial. They used his medical records to prove that.
We knew the defense ahead of time thought that those medical records were going to be good for them. And then when we started reading them, we were like, we want to enter them into evidence because it is so clear what happened to him in his life as a result of his parents' death.
Josh had had no prior psychiatric history, but 5 months after the murders, the 20-year-old checked himself into a mental health hospital for the first time, saying he hadn't processed his parents' death. He wasn't sleeping, was constantly worried and paranoid about the suspects coming after him. He told doctors he was using drugs and alcohol to cope with the pain, admitted to feeling suicidal.
And I remember seeing early signs there that something wasn't right. But at the time, I was so scared too that I didn't see it as like schizophrenia coming through.
And even as we were reading those medical records that were so powerful, I felt guilty 18 months later, reading the things that showed what he had become.
According to the medical records, by 2017, Josh said he was hearing voices, a woman in his head he wants to hurt. He told doctors he put a kitchen towel in the oven and tried to light it on fire to freshen the house. It was hard to stay in the relationship, Hannah testified.
I tried to stay for a really long time. I think we stayed together for about a year. And then it got so bad and Josh wasn't wanting to go get help. He didn't want to better himself. He felt like the medication didn't help him.
And according to those medical records, by the following year, Josh's depression, paranoia, hallucinations, and suicidal thoughts had intensified. In another psychiatric evaluation, a doctor noted patient experienced watching the murder of both his parents in 2016. Prosecutors pointed out Josh did indeed see his father dying as Antonio Sr. was wheeled out of the house on a stretcher and loaded into an ambulance. And less than 3 months later, records from a different psychiatric clinic state Josh did not witness the murder. By February 2019, things were dark. Josh was aggressive, talking to himself, referencing the devil, showing erratic behavior, and not responding to questions, his medical records say. And 2 months later, when AJ went on trial for the first time, his attorneys shocked nearly everyone in the courtroom with their theory Josh could be the real killer. And they stuck to it for all 3 trials.
Josh was finally diagnosed, meaning he saw medical professionals after the incident. But there were signs of this way before the incident. He was talking to himself.
According to family members.
According to family members, he was hearing voices. He was doing very odd, strange things. There's no question in my mind, based on my conversations with the family over 7 years, that Josh was having serious mental illness issues prior to the murders. No question.
I've covered this for as long as you've been on this case. How could you throw one son under the bus for the other?
Who, me?
Or the family? What's the reaction to that idea?
So I'm not going to speak for the family, but as a lawyer, that's my job. I actually have a duty to do that. I have no problem with that at all. If I'm doing my job ethically and aggressively, and I think I and we did that.
Do you think he could be the real killer?
For legal reasons, I'm not going to, with you, accuse anyone of anything, but I think that the evidence spoke for itself regarding that issue.
I thought it was pretty disgusting, to be honest, and desperate. I don't think there's anybody in those jury rooms in all 3 trials who believe Josh did it.
It angers me. It angers me so much because there's so much evidence that points to AJ. So much evidence. It's ridiculous that Josh's mental state was used when he was never like this before. And it doesn't make any sense. And that's why in the 3rd trial, I looked at that jury and I said, I want to be so clear. Josh was never like this before this happened.
And the idea that his reputation was maligned and dragged through the mud within a courtroom, and all he did is love his brother. He believes his brother didn't do it. His only concern after the murders was for his siblings.
Well, why not just call Josh to the stand? Why not talk to Josh? Did you ever think about that?
Many of my colleagues told me to do that very thing, talk to Josh and bring him to the courtroom. And what I said is, he's been through too much. He is a suspect in Rick DeToto's mind, and that is it. And the idea that Ryan and I would have to call him to the stand in order to prove his brother did it was never going to happen.
We know from the crime scene that the killer, if it was not the defendant, had 6 minutes to get in and out of the house and do all those things. They're trying to say a psychotic person did it in 6 minutes, that he snapped into this psychotic event where he went and killed them and then snapped out of psychosis was just totally unbelievable.
How could someone that unstable commit a double murder?
The parents were executed and an angry note was left. I mean, who's more likely to do that? Someone suffering from angry, paranoid, schizophrenic, religious, there's a demon in my head asking me to kill people, hurt myself, kill animals, all the stuff that came out. I mean, that doesn't make sense to you? I mean, it's not my job to prove exactly what he did. It's my job to show that there's reasonable doubt in this case as to what happened.
We need to stop. The community needs to stop. And anybody who is saying that they still think he did it, how dare you? Because there's not one shred of evidence to suggest he had anything to do with this crime. He is another victim. In fact, he is the most tragic victim of this crime because he lives with what happened to his parents every single day. And this defendant chose to let that happen in the courtroom. We said it in closing, it was just as important for us to clear his name as it was to convict his brother.
Tomorrow, closing arguments happen. They are set for 9:30 in the morning. As you know, the judge hasn't allowed us to bring cameras into the courtroom. Well, tomorrow, that changes. We will be in there, and so you'll be able to hear closing arguments.
The state fully took on the agreement that they would prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And they, including AJ, expect to be held to that burden beyond a reasonable doubt.
What does a murderer look like? Don't treat him any different than any other defendant. What does a murderer look like? Because he's been treated differently throughout this process. Now you know. It's time for us to bring home the truth.
Obviously, if you have followed along, you know how complex this case is. The evidence, we heard it all over the past 2 weeks, and it seems like all of the evidence was touched on in closing arguments. Everything from the alarm records to AJ's own 911 call, all of it broken down point by both the defense and prosecutors.
What did we ever do to deserve all the lies and the schemes? Those are the words of Don Armstrong in the spring and in the summer of 2016. What did they do to deserve all the lies and the schemes? The defendant drove his fancy car at his fancy private school. Then he fails out that summer, a month before his parents are murdered. And the two people who cared the most about that, the two people who were most affected by that, were scrambling to get him in another school and a football program so he can fit in. He never appreciated what his parents did for him.
We never told you AJ was a perfect kid. He lied about the car. He lied about his girlfriend. He lied about where we ate dinner. Yes, he's 16. Over 7 years, they've refused to look at anything else. Their minds were closed. This is a reckless prosecution. It's a dangerous prosecution.
Let's talk about the days leading up to the murders. He took that rubbing alcohol bottle, he got gasoline in it, he poured it across the top step of the second floor where his parents reside. Then he lights it on fire Is this something a normal 16-year-old would do?
When you start pressing the state about where is the evidence, especially all the scientific evidence, they have nothing but excuses.
Remember, we don't have to prove why, but I can tell you what's in his mind. His mind is he wants to kill his parents.
Bloody clothes, shoes, gloves, something that puts AJ in the bedroom pulling the trigger. There is nothing.
He shot the murder weapon in his room. Who does that?
No gunshot residue anywhere on AJ. His hands, his feet, his clothes, anywhere. Anywhere in his room.
The homicide detectives had to tell him, your mom is dead. That's a bad thing.
You can't rely on the accuracy of these records as to what happened, especially on the day of the murders.
There has been no evidence at all that that alarm was compromised. Combined with the cell phone records, you can convict him alone.
Two technologies, folks. They don't even know each other. And they tell us that at 1:08 he took his phone off the charger, and at 1:09, less than a minute later, the person who walked in to kill these two people, the motion sensor caught him.
The crime scene alone tells you he did it. His own words in his statement and in the 911 tells you he did it. Everything points to him. Whether people want to believe it or not, all evidence points to him. That's why they can't talk about the evidence.
Only you can stop it. Only you can tell them enough is enough.
Everyone ready?
Good morning, my name is Investigator Jimmy Dotson with the HPD Homicide Division.
This case,
Officers this morning were dispatched at approximately about 1:30 in the morning.
it's a simple first grade math problem.
The location was completely secure.
There are 4 people in a house.
There was not any sign of forced entry.
The alarm system on.
They made contact with one of the children who was inside of the house at the time.
2 people are shot in the head.
The mother was deceased on scene. The father was taken to a local area hospital where he is currently in critical condition.
2 people who walked out of that house. One of them was a 12-year-old girl.
And at this point in time, it's an ongoing investigation.
There's only one other person.
Following up on some leads.
You want to know something about that person?
Trying to narrow down some things, gather a suspect.
He's the only person awake at the time his parents were killed.
This was an outstanding family.
The only person handling the murder weapon right before his parents died.
Were the kids able to tell you, hey, we think someone did this?
He's the only person trying to set the house on fire with his parents inside.
I can't give you that information right now. Like I said, I don't want to compromise the investigation.
The court declares a mistrial.
He's the only person.
It's kind of the all-American family.
Declaring a mistrial.
That his parents called him over and over and over.
For 7 years we fought this. Over and over and over.
Kind of getting some history on things that have been going on with the family in general, outside of the family, inside of the home, things of that nature. Because we're trying to do our best to get down to what's going on in this household and figure out, who our suspects are, so we can let this up.
What if they find you guilty?
Like I told you earlier, I refuse to think about that. Like it's the last thing that's on my mind.
Find the defendant, Antonio Armstrong Jr., guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment.
You better get that camera out of the way.
All right, juror number 1, is this your verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
Juror number 2, is this your verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
A.J. Armstrong killed his parents, so said a jury of his peers.
Juror number 4, is this your verdict?
Yes, it is.
No tears, no reaction from A.J. on the outside. He was fingerprinted, then led out of the courtroom by deputies, mouthing a message to his wife as he left.
I mean, poor Kate. She's only had one love her life, and you could hear her crying in the background, and we felt horrible for her.
Their future as a family changed in an instant. Life in prison, possibility of parole after 40 years.
Do I think about the consequences? Yes. But the idea that you could walk into a room in the middle of the night and kill both your parents and you shouldn't spend the rest of your life in prison, that doesn't even enter my equation.
That broke my heart. It broke my heart. That's the first time AJ hasn't come back with us from court. And we're walking back, and it was just devastating. It's the first time in 7 years after hearings, trials, all the stuff that we've gone through. It's the first time he wasn't right there.
When it comes down to it and you're alone at the end of the night with that verdict and your thoughts, what was that like that first night?
It's brutal. It's really brutal. I don't think I slept. We fought with everything we had for 7 years, and we left everything, in that courtroom.
Before reading the verdict, I whispered to myself, I said, Dawn, this one's gonna hurt, because she may have forgiven him the second he pulled the trigger. I mean, maybe she did. I don't know, but that's not how justice works.
Justice is not how the Armstrong family sees this. A husband, a father, a grandson was taken from them 7 years after living through the first tragedy.
They're wonderful people, they're loving, they're just like you, just like anyone else who have gone through a horrific public trial, and they've lost their son or their daughter, and now they've lost their grandson.
I know you don't want to even talk to us, but Dawn meant the world to us, and we can't imagine the position that they are in right now, and that's how we feel.
As upset as that family is, they are not going to give up, and we're not going to give up, but it's affected me. It's affected me. I'm tired. I think about AJ all the time. I think about his family. I think about things we could have done in the trial, just little things. It's kind of haunting.
This one is tough because in the same way, we didn't have a family support behind us, and that gets us through a lot of nights, knowing that you're doing it for the family. And we didn't have that. We just had each other, and we believe the truth on our side. And so it's an extremely emotional case. These folks were good people, and they went to bed that night in their own home with their own children, and they were killed for no apparent reason.
He told me something right before the jury walked in. I can't tell you what it is, but it confirms what an awesome young man he is. I can't tell you, but it confirms.
I can see you getting emotional.
Yeah, it's tough. I had to suppress everything, and it's slowly coming out. Kind of like being in combat. You're in combat for 7 years, you're fighting, you're constantly under stress, there's tension, there's anxiety, and then you get out of the war, and you're back home, and you're just, what do I do now, And the tension in that courtroom was, I've never been in a courtroom that tense.
You better get that camera out of our way.
For prosecutors, this wasn't just about convicting one son. It was about exonerating the other. If AJ was guilty, Josh was innocent.
I believe that to the core. Because one of the things we learned from reading those text messages is Dawn Armstrong was an honorable woman and spoke the truth. I think the idea of her mentally ill son being used in that courtroom the way he was, I think she would have been appalled.
How could you do this? How are you okay with this? You ruined Josh's life, and here you are playing house with your little girlfriend and your little baby now. And meanwhile, Josh's life is completely destroyed forever by this. And there will be people out there who don't know the facts about this case and think Josh did it still. He'll forever live with that.
The picture-perfect, all-American family now finished, shattered. The thing about this story is it became about AJ Armstrong, the teen who killed his parents. A tragic, tumultuous, complicated case, no doubt, but somehow the people at the center of it all truly can be forgotten. Two parents who wanted what's best for their children.
They weren't extraordinary, they were remarkably ordinary, but they gave their kids so much. Fancy cars, they celebrated their kids. They were very well liked because they were so darn charismatic. And I think that's one of the things that was shocking about it.
I think she felt the most hopeless in this entire thing. I saw a mother who didn't know what was going on with him and couldn't fix him and didn't understand it and was upset by it. She was the disciplinarian. She was the one coming down on him, and he couldn't manipulate her.
You can't spend 30 minutes with that kid and think he did this. His resilience, his humor, his intelligence, his strength, his love of his family. You can't understand it until you're with him and you spend time with him.
If AJ didn't kill his parents, who killed them?
Not my job. It's not my job to figure that out.
The family says, oh, you don't know AJ, you don't know AJ. We don't need to know him, that's the point. The point of the jury was to listen to the facts. They don't need to know him, they just needed to hear the facts. And anybody with common sense would know, listening to those facts, that there's nobody else that could have done it.
Do you think the jury got it right?
I absolutely believe the jury got it right.
How do you answer those people in the community who are like, especially his family members, there's no way AJ killed his parents?
Do you know who else was charismatic? Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was charismatic. Ted Bundy was outgoing. Ted Bundy was loved by everyone. Ted Bundy was murdering women. You can't always buy into people's manipulation because sometimes people are really good at putting a front on, and behind closed doors, there's somebody completely different.
You think behind closed doors, AJ was completely different?
I think he is. I think he's very, very manipulative. And I think that's why he's getting the support from his family that he has now. And it breaks my heart because they're not seeing through the facade.
The very thing that makes it difficult for folks is youth, is no apparent reason, is the very thing that haunts me.
Thank you so much.
Because if someone like A.J. Armstrong can do that, that's a horrible concept to accept.
Elizabeth Pena and Jennifer Erkman were out together Thursday night, and that's the last time anyone remembers seeing them.
She just told me she was gonna go home, and she never got home. And it's just been a search ever since. We've been passing these posters out everywhere.
Well, last thing is, I love you, and
Yeah, we both told her that we both love her, and that we would see her, but we never got to see her again.
The search for two people missing for 3 days has apparently ended in tragedy this evening. This afternoon, authorities found the nude bodies of two teenage girls in North
Even in a city where a case of homicide no longer has a numbing effect on those who hear about it, this case is a real gut-wrencher. So many questions, not the least of which is what killed those children? Who could have done such a terrible thing?
Was Peter a follower or a leader?
I don't think he was a leader.
Have you ever watched like a show like on National Geographic?
Questioning at least 5 suspects.
It's similar to what lions do to gazelles.
Police have filed capital murder charges against teenage boys.
Jenny and Elizabeth were the gazelles, and I'll just leave it like that.
In positively the wrong place at the wrong time.
This is horrible. Absolutely horrible. You can't script a president of the United States intervening. You can't script that the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals would use this case to decide whether the lethal injection constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. You can't script the Supreme Court would decide 17-year-olds don't know that you shouldn't kill somebody.
Look at me.
You can't script the impact that these two families have had on victims' rights.
Why can't they put a belt around their neck? Why can't they stop them down with their feet like that, stomp them down the ground till they're dead? And why not lay them there for an hour and let them die?
I can still remember that day. It just took so much for me.
Introduce yourself and how you're related to this case.
My name is Venancio Medina Jr. I was the 14-year-old kid that was involved in this case.
Just broke my heart And a piece of me is not here anymore. It's with, part of me is still with my daughter.
It's just, still hard to believe that happened and it's been that long.
Houston's T.C. Jester Park, in daylight, a haven for runners and cyclists. 30 years ago, it was a shortcut for two innocent teenaged girls, and what happened next not far from here was unspeakable. This is the story of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena. On June 24th, 1993, they crossed paths with what those involved in these cases have called pure evil.
Yeah, so this was at Waltrip in the gym. I'm wearing my gym shirt, she's not, but, and this was right before the end of our freshman year.
May 1993, 14-year-old Jennifer Ertman and 15-year-old Christina Alvarez were finishing up their first year at Waltrip High School.
We were just hanging out in gym.
They were best friends who lived close to each other, and their friendship went back years.
She was funny, fun to be around, super sweet. She was obsessed with New Kids on the Block, of course, like we all were, so her room was full of posters.
That freshman year, the two welcomed Elizabeth Pena into their group. She was a little older, but in the same grade, and had attended a different middle school. They all soon clicked.
Super sweet, yeah, very nice. Always happy, always smiling.
They were typical teenaged girls. Christina remembers Jennifer, a rule follower, a good student. Elizabeth, always with a big smile. She was Melissa and Adolph Pena's oldest child.
Pretty much carefree, she loved life and her friends and like going to the beach, getting her nails done, all things little teenage girls like to do. Talk on the phone.
The Penas were happy the girls had found each other. Jennifer was a good influence, she was an only child, and her parents were strict, but they trusted her. On June 24th, 1993, the girls were invited to hang out with friends at an apartment complex in the neighborhood. By this time, Christina and her family had moved farther away.
According to my mom, I was supposed to go. They wanted me to go, but she didn't let me go.
Jennifer and Elizabeth did go. They had an 11:30 p.m. curfew. Elizabeth's parents dropped them off.
Well, last thing is, I love you, and
Yeah, we both told her that we both love her and that we would see her, but we never got to see her again.
On June 24th, 1993, 14-year-old Jennifer Ertman and 16-year-old Elizabeth Pena were enjoying some summer freedom. It was a hot Thursday night. They were getting together with friends at a nearby apartment. Elizabeth's parents drove them there.
I remember her and I dropped her off, and for some odd reason, she didn't call us to come pick her up. It was about midnight, I guess, close to. And she decided to walk home. That was the worst mistake she ever made.
Trying to beat an 11:30 p.m. curfew, the girls took a shortcut through T.C. Jester Park. It was late and mostly deserted. They needed to get to the train trestle over White Oak Bayou. It would save some time.
And they took what they thought was a shortcut, and that shortcut was a shortcut into what I would call a modern-day Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
18-year-old Peter Cantu was running the initiation of 17-year-old Raul Villarreal into what was called the Black and White Gang. They were also in T.C. Jester Park drinking and fighting. As part of the initiation, Villarreal was to take on several gang members. Derek Sean O'Brien, Jose Medellin, his younger brother Venancio Medellin, and Efren Perez were also there. Less than an hour later, the girls crossed their path, and what would follow was horrific.
If you ever watched like a show like on National Geographic, it's similar to what lions do to gazelles. And Jenny and Elizabeth were the gazelles, and I'll just leave it like that.
Elizabeth was the first to be attacked. Later testimony revealed Jose Medellin grabbed her and threw her to the ground. Jennifer could have gotten away, but instead ran to help her friend.
It was so hard when I found that out and when I read that, because of course I was like, that's so her, but why? You know, why didn't you go and get help, and maybe you could both still be here, but you know.
The girls were raped for more than an hour, but the horrific sexual assault wasn't enough. Peter Cantu decided they had to die.
And then you got to take them back there and kill them. And they had to work hard to do that. You know, by strangulation wasn't good enough. It didn't work to make sure. Then they stomped on them, you know, stomped on their throats, put their shoes on their throats. From Peter, I know what he did best because I heard it so many times. But I mean, you know, kicking Elizabeth Pena in the face and the jaw with his steel-toed boots, and then stomping on Jennifer Urban's neck to make sure they were dead.
The teen boys then went back to Cantu's house and divided up the spoils, money and jewelry. Jose Medellin took Jennifer's ring with the initial E to give to his girlfriend Esther, and they bragged to Cantu's older brother and his wife about what they did.
And they were listening to this horrific story, what they did to these you-know-what, and I got them, I got this, I got that, and we had to take them out. We didn't need any witnesses. They even took trophies, a little Mickey Mouse watch, you know, showing what they did. You know, we're going to be on the news. And luckily, they had a conscience.
Jennifer and Elizabeth's parents couldn't find them, and that was unusual.
It was like, you know, okay, if they're spending the night, you know, they should have called, and then, you know, no word.
After reporting them missing to police, Jennifer's father, Randy Ertman, made missing persons flyers. The Ertmans and Peñas had an army of the girls' friends to pass them out. Their search was desperate, and every hour that passed took away any remaining hope.
She just told me she was gonna go home, and she never got home.
I don't know, I guess we all knew it was gonna be something bad.
By the third day, prodded by his wife, Peter Cantu's brother called Crime Stoppers of Houston to anonymously report the location of the girls' bodies. His wife later testified she was afraid of Peter Cantu, and she and her husband had watched the news coverage on the searches and wanted to give the parents peace. 4 days after Jennifer and Elizabeth's brutal killings, their tortured, decomposing bodies were found by patrol officers in a secluded, wooded area.
I didn't even think there were bodies.
Houston Police Homicide Detective Ray Zaragoza was called to the park.
Well, we were up north on a case, and then it was around noontime, and I received a call, and it was at TC Jester Park. And I remember it was hot that day, really hot. And so, you know, my partner and I, you know, we drove over there, and then we see this crowd, large crowd in helicopters.
As word spread, people started gathering. This was the news the community feared would come. They were scared and shocked that 2 teen girls could just vanish. Soon they would see a father's pain on full display, raw and angry. The city would also see it captured by television news cameras.
And I don't think anybody in Houston will ever forget Randy barreling down there and screaming, and HPD officers having to hold him back. I don't think anybody will forget that.
It seemed like he was wanting to go somewhere. And then finally he wanted to go see if that was his daughter over there. And so I came in behind him, because that's the way I came at the time, and I tapped him on the shoulder, and he turned around, and I thought he was going to hit me. He put his fist up. I said, wait, you know, and then we talked a little bit, calmed him down a little bit, and told him what he needed to do.
The detective diffused the situation. The parents' suffering was just beginning.
I can still remember that day. It just took so much for me. Just broke my heart, and a piece of me is not here anymore. It's with, part of me is still with my daughter. I'll never ever forget that day. I'm sorry.
On a hot Houston night, Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena never could have predicted the evil they'd happen upon.
You know, to this day, it just bothers me. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that humans, especially kids, could do that. But I guess that's the way it is. That's evil. That's evil.
As the girls were cutting through T.C. Jester Park in order to make curfew, they were attacked by gang members, raped and strangled. When a belt broke, they used shoelaces to choke them to death and then stomped and kicked them with steel-toed boots. 4 days later, police were led to their mutilated bodies by a call to the Crime Stoppers tip line. Further information led them to the gang members.
We hit them around 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, all at the same time.
Detective Ray Zaragoza and his partner were given the arrest warrant for 18-year-old Peter Cantu. He was considered the ringleader. They found evidence from the crime in his room.
We go to his room, there he is on the bed, you know, and we arrest him at the time. And then, you know, we're looking around, and in plain sight, on top of a dresser, we see all this jewelry and rings.
Jennifer's goofy watch that her parents had given her, her necklaces and rings, and Cantu's steel-toed work boots were in his room. 17-year-olds Efren Perez and Raul Villarreal, 18-year-old Jose Medellin and his 14-year-old brother Venancio, and 18-year-old Derek Sean O'Brien were also arrested in coordinated operations that morning. Police later learned O'Brien had returned to the crime scene.
I remember telling the crime scene unit at the time, because I'd watched TV and I'd watched the detective things, and I remember saying that usually the criminals are always at the scene after something happens. And I remembered that, and I told the crime scene, hey, I said, can you take a picture of everybody that's on the railroad tracks, stuff like that? I said, okay. Well, later on we found out O'Brien was up there, you know, and I said, wow, I guess it is true that they hang around like that, you know. So that's how we found out about him. He was up there laughing.
O'Brien wasn't laughing when he and 3 of the 6 suspects were walked back to jail after their initial arraignment. He kept his head down. Peter Cantu, the alleged ringleader, was not as measured. He lashed out at reporters and photographers, an outburst that showed his age and his anger.
I think he was proud of what he did. He was they were all such evil people, is all I can say. Who in their right mind would do anything like that? You had to be evil.
Six teenage boys ranging in age from 18 to as young as 14 were arrested a day after the remains of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena were found. But justice would not come easy. What seemed like a slam dunk for convictions took many twists and turns. The murders struck fear into the community.
This case is a real gut wrencher.
They were just walking home, not even that far away, and somebody has to do that to them. Why, you know?
Definitely didn't want to go out, didn't want to, you know, didn't feel safe anywhere.
And in a city numb to daily violence, the girls' deaths hit differently.
You had visual images of the pain on the parents, and because they became everybody's daughter, and it just hit home. with everybody.
These are kids, and you're thinking, how does this happen? You know, we've had bad crimes in Houston. We had a lot of bad crimes in Houston while I was a prosecutor as well as a judge, but nothing compared to this.
So offensive that even other inmates made their disapproval known by marking the suspects' jail jumpsuits with slurs. Prosecutor Don Smith would soon be strategizing for trial.
I was off at Boy Scout summer camp with my troop, and I got a call from my investigator that says, "You won't believe what happened," and it fell in our division.
Out in the community, people gathered for vigils and at memorials in honor of the two murdered girls. The Ertmans and Peñas almost always attended. The outpouring of sympathy was comforting.
Oh my God, we got letters from all over the world, people with their condolences telling us that they were sorry for what happened.
Hundreds of people paid their respects at the funerals. Jennifer was laid to rest first, followed by Elizabeth the next day. Coincidentally, they are buried at the same cemetery within sight of each other. For Adolph Peña, some memories never fade.
I remember the last time we took her to a beach. We went to Florida, and for some odd reason, it was not long after that she got killed. And for some odd reason, I can still see her face in the back seat of that van when we were coming home. And I don't know why, I'll always remember that. She had such a good time at the beach with all our friends, and I'll never forget that. In the rearview mirror, the look on her face, she was just so happy.
Peter Cantu, charged with...
Within 7 months, the case against Peter Cantu was going to trial, and the others weren't far behind. It was unprecedented. Venancio confessed and agreed to testify against all the defendants except his brother. He was not charged in connection with Elizabeth's rape and was given a 40-year sentence for sexually assaulting Jennifer, the maximum sentence allowed for a juvenile in Texas. But there was a catch that didn't sit well with Jennifer's parents. Just before he turned 18, a judge could transfer him to adult prison or release him on parole. He remains in prison today. He was the state's key witness.
What do you think would have been fair? What do you think would have been? He told the story to me and gave the written confession because he was genuinely remorseful of what happened. And he was important to our case because he's the only one that, as far as I know, that Peter Cantu said, "Look, you know, Vinny, you can't go with us back into the woods. We're gonna have to kill him. You stay out here, you're too young to see that."
Venancio Medellin testified against everyone except his older brother, Jose. With their star witness secured, the state needed more background on Peter Cantu. He was the first defendant to go to trial.
So we had to go back and dig it all up. So you go through everything and, start finding juvenile records, go to their schools, talk to the principals, school teachers, anybody that, any follow-up, any lead on what kind of person, has he been a danger to the community all his life or not.
And what did you find about Peter Cantu?
Oh, we found, Peter's life of crime began back in elementary school.
According to testimony, Cantu assaulted a female teacher and then bullied her. He had been kicked out of school, he was already on probation for assault, and he had his parents fooled.
Was Peter a follower or a leader?
I don't think he was a leader.
He no doubt in my mind, he was a ringleader. He was kind of a dominating personality with them.
It all came to a head on that hot summer night in the park. Smith knew what his final argument would be well before a jury was ever seated.
The girls, they never got to graduate from high school, senior prom, go off to, if they were going to go to college and try to be what they were going to be, get married, have a wedding, raise children, have their own child, give their parents a grandchild. They never had a chance to do any of that.
Brother Joe.
Most days the courtroom was packed, the hallway overflowing. There were the Ertmans and Peñas, their supporters, and even the girls' friends and teachers from Waltrip High School.
What you're seeing is a death of young girls
But what you've seen is the death of a family as well. It's gut-wrenching for the Ertmans and the Peñas to sit through this.
The testimony was grueling. The two fathers, Randy Ertman and Adolph Peña, often sought comfort in each other. Gut-wrenching details of how Jennifer and Elizabeth suffered were just too much to bear. The crime scene photos were worse.
I never looked at any of the photos, and even just hearing the testimony, that was bad enough.
State District Judge Bill Harmon presided.
And what was your impression of Peter Cantu?
He was a very, very violent individual.
Harmon denied a defense request for a change of venue, reasoning even with all the pretrial publicity, potential jurors only knew the victims' names and faces.
There were 5 adult defendants and 1 juvenile defendant, so they didn't really know those names.
Cantu would break a smile as he entered the courtroom and would often scribble in a notebook. His defense team had to manage him.
Yeah, I mean, we're worried about him behaving during trial. You know, here's that famous incident where he kicks at the cameraman, you know, when he's being led in and out of a jail. And we always sort of use that as an example of what not to do. I don't care what anybody says to you or how you feel about the testimony. All you can do is just be neutral, be calm, and not give them a reason to be mad at you in the courtroom. So, yeah, we had that as a constant concern.
The defense didn't call a single witness. The evidence against Cantu was overwhelming and even included testimony from his own brother, describing how Cantu and the others bragged about the girls' murders.
We didn't have an alibi. We didn't have self-defense. You know, we didn't have some of the traditional defenses that you might have, so we just had to put the state to their proof. And in all honesty, the defendant's family coming in to testify, you know, made it difficult. So if what we were really concerned about was trying to keep from getting the death penalty, we couldn't lose our credibility in the guilt-innocence phase by taking some, you know, outlandish position.
Eyewitness News reporter Elma Barrera has been following every gripping moment of the trial, and she's joining us live now from the Harris County Courthouse with the verdict.
After 4 days of trial and less than 30 minutes of deliberation, there was a verdict.
We, the jury, find defendant Peter Anthony Cantu guilty of capital murder charges.
Randy Ertman sobbed.
I know he's going to be put away. They should seek the death penalty on him, and he should get it. He should try.
Look at me!
The drama was yet to come. Five adult defendants charged with capital murder, and 1 had already been convicted less than a year after Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Peña were raped, strangled, and stomped to death.
Who in their right mind would do anything like that? You had to be evil.
The question was whether Peter Cantu would be sentenced to die.
My job is to administer justice.
And do you think it was done in the Peter Cantu case?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It took 4 hours for the jury to return a death sentence.
I think he always knew that he was going to get the death penalty.
But first, Judge Harmon made an unprecedented offer.
He goes, what do you think if, when the jury comes back with a decision, if I allow Mr. Ertman to say a few words? And I just went, I think he would love that.
And I asked each one of them if they wanted to have an opportunity to make a statement before I imposed the sentence, and Randy Ertman said he did, and Adolph Peña said he did not.
Mr. Ertman.
The weight and emotion of Randy Ertman took over the courtroom.
We didn't know what was going to happen.
In a booming voice, he berated Peter Cantu.
Yes, sir, I do. You know, there's a lot of children back here. And I'm going to put myself down at your level. I'm not going to call you sir. I'm not going to call you a fag. You can look at me if you want.
Look at me! Look!
You're not even an animal. You know I have cats that kill animals. They kill an animal, they eat it. You're worse than that. You're. Excuse me. Look at me. Look at me good.
Those excruciating moments in the courtroom in 1994 made way for future victim impact statements in Texas.
You destroyed a life, you destroyed my life, you destroyed my wife's life, you destroyed...
His, credited with being the first, the Peñas believe that day Ertman said it all. Today, such statements are standard procedure at the end of a trial.
You're worse than anything I've ever seen in my life. And I hope to God, and this is wrong too, that you rot in hell. Do you understand that? Just nod your head if you can even think about talking, boy.
It was just the right thing to do at that particular time in that particular case with that particular father.
He was a force of his own.
He was something else. Randy Ertman was something else.
With Peter Cantu convicted and sentenced to die, Derek Sean O'Brien, a 9th grade dropout with a criminal history, was next up. But before the April 1994 trial began, Houston police said they linked him to another brutal crime.
We found out that he was implicated in another murder of Patricia Lopez.
Patricia Lopez was a 27-year-old mother of 2 children. Her partially nude body was found in another Houston park in January of 1993, 6 months before Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena were murdered. Lopez had been stabbed and her throat slit. According to police, they found a beer can with O'Brien's fingerprints at the scene and later discovered, they say, that Jose Medellín's DNA matched DNA found on Lopez's body. While no one was charged with her murder, prosecutors presented those details during sentencing in O'Brien and Medellín's trials for the murders of Jennifer and Elizabeth. The autopsy indicated Lopez, small in stature, tried to fight off her attackers.
This was nothing new to them. They had done it before.
O'Brien, who is now 19, was found guilty of capital murder. It took less than 30 minutes for the jury to sentence him to death, the second of the 6 suspects to be condemned. Elizabeth's parents thought it was too easy.
Why can't they put a belt around their neck? Why can't they stop them down with their feet like that, stomp them down the ground till they're dead? And why not lay them there for an hour and let them die?
14-year-old Venancio Medellín pleaded guilty to aggravated sexual assault of Jennifer Ertman. He testified against everyone except his brother, and as a juvenile was sentenced to 40 years in prison with the possibility of parole when he turned 18. 18-year-old Peter Cantu, the ringleader, was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to die, as was Derek Sean O'Brien. It was then decided for convenience that Jose Medellín, Efren Perez, and Raul Villarreal would be tried at the same time in the same courthouse, but in different courtrooms with different judges and juries. This so that witnesses wouldn't have to keep coming back.
The last 3, they ran simultaneously, and so we were all split up in different courtrooms. I went to Medellín. I think you were in Villarreal.
Villarreal,
and
yes.
then Randy and Sandy were in Perez. In the whole scheme of things, to get it done in one week, it made it easier on probably us as victims and, you know, the prosecutors and just all the people that had testified, to have them there and, you know, just go from one courtroom to another and just get it all done.
While the grisly details were confined to the courtroom, the tension spilled over into the courthouse hallways.
You belong in hell. We live for the day that you die.
Medellín, Perez, and Villarreal were all convicted. That was the given, according to courthouse observers.
I hope you rot in hell.
Whether they would get the death penalty was the real question. The 5 who were eligible did.
And in modern day crime history, that is the most death penalties ever in a singular criminal incident, still to this day.
The sentences were victories, but they wouldn't stand forever.
We had that sentence, and then it's like, nope, took it away.
That was terrible.
Six teenagers, 5 adults under Texas law, and 1 juvenile. By October of 1994, they were on their way to prison. The 5 adults with death sentences, the juvenile with a 40-year term. In just 16 months, justice for Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena, 2 sweet and beautiful teens who suffered in their last moments, had been served, and their parents thought the courthouse was behind them. Andy Kahn is a longtime crime victims advocate who worked for the city of Houston at the time. He befriended and often spoke for the girls' families.
I still cringe to this day. It's still the worst case I've ever dealt with, read, or had privy to be on the inside to, still to this day.
We think that these girls happened along and that they were in positively the wrong place at the wrong time.
The murders of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena shook Houston. The winding road to justice was frustrating. With convictions, Jennifer's father, Randy Ertman, turned his attention to when the sentences would be carried out.
And he goes, hey, you know, I'd really like to be there when they execute these guys. Can I do that? And I say, and I pause and I say, trust me, he didn't say it so nicely or politely. And I probably cleaned up that entire sentence for him. But I stopped. I said, you know, that's a really good question. I said, let me look. Let me find out. So I go back and I look, and I find out that victims' families were specifically prohibited by policy. They, along with other inmates, were the only categories of people not allowed to witness an execution.
The Ertmans, Peñas, and Kahn were determined to change that. They found a sponsor for a bill, and the next year they testified at a criminal justice committee hearing at the state capitol in Austin. But politics being as they are, the bill died due to behind-the-scenes infighting. Instead, Kahn found another way.
So I went into Plan B mode. All right, you wouldn't pass the dang law. I'm going to get the policy changed. I called the chairman of the Board of Criminal Justice at that time, Alan Polunsky, whom the death row unit is now named after. And I said, Alan, here's the situation. Here's the deal. He listened to me. He said, all right, I'm going to put you on the next Board of Criminal Justice meeting. You come down. And he did. The Ertmans, the Peñas, and myself drove down to Corpus Christi, testified in front of the 9-person board. They voted unanimously to change the policy.
But it would be years before the Ertmans and Peñas would witness anything. And in legal blows to the victims' families, the executions of Efren Perez and Raul Villarreal would never come.
I just don't think they deserve to be alive. I really don't. For what they did to my Elizabeth.
In 2005, more than 11 years after Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena were murdered, the Supreme Court in another case, Roper versus Simmons, ruled that executing a person under 18 at the time he or she committed a murder would be a violation of the defendant's constitutional rights. The decision applied to all 17-year-olds who had been convicted of murder, so the sentences for Perez and Villarreal were commuted from death to life with the possibility of parole. Life without parole did not become an option in Texas until later that year. Perez and Villarreal are eligible for parole in the year 2029.
You're totally against, them being released early. They were sentenced and they need to do their sentence and, in full.
The next month, the victims' families were confronted with another obstacle. Jose Medellin claimed since he was a Mexican national, he should have had a representative from the Mexican consulate by his side after his arrest. The Supreme Court agreed to hear his case, only to dismiss it 2 months later. His execution seemed on track until President George W. Bush, the former governor of Texas, intervened and ordered hearings for all 51 Mexican nationals on death row, including Medellin. Later, the Supreme Court said the president overstepped his authority.
I mean, when you think about it, this was not some ordinary appeal. This went all the way up to the president of the United States, who is now intervening in a death penalty case. That doesn't happen. To my knowledge, it's never happened. It'll happen in a federal case maybe, but this is a state case.
In 2006, Derek Sean O'Brien was the first to be executed. The Ertmans and Peñas, who pushed for the right to be witnesses, were there along with Sergeant Zaragoza.
And, you know, what everybody says about how wrong it is and stuff like that, and how what animalistic it is, it's not like that. They just go to sleep.
And how do you think that is compared to what happened to the girls?
Oh, they got it out easy on that one. You know, the poor girls had to suffer. And I mean suffer, too.
But O'Brien was the only one who gave what Adolph Pena thought at the time was a heartfelt apology. And that same year, Peter Cantu got his execution date from trial judge Bill Harmon.
He was brought before me in the 178th. I obviously hadn't seen Cantu since 1994. This was 12 years later. And in my opinion, he was just as deserving of the death penalty in 2006 as he was deserving in 1994. And so I set his execution date and he was executed.
In 2010, 17 years after the crimes, Cantu, the angry ringleader who decided the girls would have to die, was executed.
It just made you feel a little bit at ease, you know, that somebody that killed your daughter is no longer alive. That's just relieves me.
His trial attorney believes Cantu was misunderstood. His actions, the product of his age and environment. As federal judge Keith Ellison alluded to, Morrow points out, in deciding his habeas petition, which was denied.
You know, he had time to grow and become a man and reflect on what he'd done, and I think he was very remorseful.
In the end, he had only one last word.
And I asked Cantu, do you have any last words, anything you'd like to say? And I will never forget. He looks up to the ceiling like I'm doing that, and he goes, nah. Just like that, nah.
Cantu's the last of the executions. 2 years earlier, and after his last-minute appeals were rejected, Medellin was executed. The Peñas and Ertmans had made 3 trips to the Texas death chamber. The Ertmans did not stop for interviews afterward.
On a personal level, it's frustrating as a family member to know that this young man, or this man, has lived 15 years behind bars, almost as long as my cousin was alive before he ended her life. That's frustrating, yes.
O'Brien, Medellin, and Cantu are buried in Captain Joe Byrd Cemetery in Huntsville, the largest prison cemetery in the state of Texas, and for prisoners whose families won't claim them.
They were bad, and they weren't going to get any better. I mean, you never forget, but, you know, you have to move on.
For 30 years, Melissa and Adolph Pena have learned to live without their oldest daughter, Elizabeth.
She's still part of our life, even if she's not here.
Their 2 younger children kept them going.
We still had things we had to do. You know, got to get up, take the kids to school. You know, there's after-school activities, there's this and there's that.
But for Sandra and Randy Ertman, Jennifer was all they had.
The Ertmans had worked so hard to have a child, and they had a child, beautiful young girl, 14 years old, and that was the end of the line. I mean, that branch on that tree doesn't go any further.
They never hid their pain. Instead, they and the Peñas harnessed it for change.
2 things, positive things, spurred on from the Ertman-Pena case, and that's victim impact statements and, the ability to witness executions. They're responsible for that, and that will be here by the time way before I'm gone and whatever. That will always be here, and they did it.
It was time, that victims' families were just not ignored, and, that we have a say-so in things now. It helps to have a voice.
No other case has given victims more rights in Texas.
My name is Venancio Medellin Jr. I was the 14-year-old kid that was involved in this case, 30 years ago.
So you're 44 now.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a long time.
Yes.
Venancio Medellin has spent 3 decades in prison and for the first time agreed to an interview.
Maybe people can see that, you know, I'm not the 14-year-old kid that I was back then, that at some point I turned into a man and I grew up.
He said that fateful night in June was the first time he had ever hung out with his brother Jose Medellin and his friends.
I mean, we were all guilty.
He confessed to aggravated sexual assault of Jennifer Ertman and testified against everyone except his brother.
Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you stop it? Why
Right.
didn't you try to get help?
So we were pretty much in a secluded area. So I didn't really become assertive with it, with the idea of leaving, because at the same time, even though I wanted to be accepted by my brother and his friends, I also was intimidated. I was afraid that they might turn on me. I remember when like Raul, Sean, they put a belt around one of the girls, like her neck, and I started seeing that. And one of the other girls was taken further back into the woods, so I couldn't see them. But I do remember seeing, you know, that part.
And at the time, what was your reaction?
I was frozen. I was stuck. You know, I couldn't do nothing. You know, I wasn't going to step in then, because then for surely I thought they would turn on me.
I mean, Jennifer was your same age.
Yes, yes, she was. And you know, I understand that it's hard to express sometimes, because anything that I say that I feel that might be a sad feeling or a negative feeling or a negative thought, you know, is dwarfed by what Jennifer and Elizabeth went through. So it's almost like what I felt or thought, it's nothing, you know, because they felt the pain, they felt the hurt and the loneliness of that night and everything. It's amplified compared to what I felt or feel currently. But still, I would want to express that I'm sorry for what happened. But I can't take it back. I wish that I could, but I cannot. Associate's degree, by the way.
Medellin brought his certificates for a GED and an associate's degree. He is an artist at the prison and is proud of his airbrushing skills. This mural is in the visitation room. He said he stayed away from gangs and prison tattoos because out of all of those involved, he is the only one who has an end date on his sentence.
If I didn't see that light at the end of the tunnel, even though that light was so far ahead, so far away that it was just a tiny little speck, you know, I knew that there was hope somewhere, at some point, you know. I didn't know when it was going to be. I still don't know when it's going to be, but the light is getting closer. And that's always kept me, you know, level-headed and always trying to do the right thing.
Venancio Medellin is housed at the same unit as Texas's death row. He was last denied parole in October of 2020. He will complete his full sentence in 2033. The Peñas are skeptical he can reintegrate and plan to fight any release. Efren Perez and Raul Villarreal, both 17 when they became killers, are now nearing 50 years old. They are eligible for parole in the year 2029.
What have they done that they deserve to be released early? I don't care if they're a model prisoner. They sure as hell weren't model citizens.
For 30 years, family and friends have lived with the memories of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Peña, and they have honored them in their own ways.
Why did you want to name your daughter after Jennifer?
To keep her memory alive. Yeah, to make sure that her parents knew that I was never gonna, forget about her.
Randy Ertman died in 2014 from lung cancer.
we bonded because we knew what the other was going through.
He was a protective father, fierce ally, and friend.
He was a force of his own.
He was something else. Randy Ertman was something else. He contributed so much to this case.
The horror that happened in the dark woods at a Houston park was unimaginable. The murders of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena, one of the most notorious crimes in Texas history. Their innocent faces, unforgettable.
I hope that they'll always remember the two girls because they were innocent. They didn't deserve this. And I hope to God that people will always remember the two girls, Elizabeth and Jennifer.
ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, ISO, Alamaz, Donna E, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Oklahoma, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, Homus, ISO, Homus, Rogan, Alamaz, Hilary, Oklahoma, ISO, Homus, Alamaz, Yuri, ISO, Oklahoma, Alamaz, Yuri, Homus, ISO, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Alamaz, ISO, Zokontal, Alamaz, Homus, Alamaz, Alamaz, Homus, Alamaz, Homus, Alamaz, Zokontal, Homus, Zokontal, 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 Alamaz, Alamaz,